Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome into City Central right here on STL Sports Central. I'm Matthew Rocchio, joined today by two other hosts, Grant Salsman and Thomas Welch, because we had some big news earlier today. It was breaking during the Randy Carricker show this morning when I was on with Joe Roderick, and that was, of course, Lutz and St. Louis City SC parting ways 5 years and 8 days from when he first took over to build this club. He built the club, but unfortunately, things could not continue after that magical 2023 season. First of all, gentlemen, how you guys doing today? Grant?
Doing well. I was surprised.
Thomas, how about you, sir?
Same. Definitely very shocked. Did not see this coming. But you know, it was a frustrating loss for everybody. So you know, the chips fell where they may, and here we are.
So right out of the gate, Grant, your initial reaction, you were at the STL Sports Central studio when it happened. You ran in to give us the news on the morning show. People have gotten to hear my opinion, but give me your thoughts, both the initial reaction and also now that it's had, 7-8 hours to cook. How are you thinking about this one?
My initial reaction was very surprised because it seems like Lutz was at the core of everything St. Louis City. It almost felt like he was above being fired. You know what I mean? Like it was that he was one of the core founders, the pillars of this franchise. But I heard a really good comp earlier, and I don't remember what it was, who said it, but the Cardinals, if we're comparing St. Louis teams, had John Mozeliak, who obviously had success, more success than Lutz ever had with St. Louis City. And then Mozeliak messed things up, and they kept the guy that messed things up to get out of it. St. Louis City has the guy that had the most success, I guess you can say, in franchise history in 3 years. And then he messed things up, and they don't want him to be the guy to get them out of it. And I had pondered on it. At first, I was very surprised. I think I'm kind of in on the move. I think I'm okay with it. I don't think I'm that angry at ownership. I've seen a lot of lashing out and people upset. But I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, it's not like Lutz has a ton of experience as a sporting director. His first job was with St. Louis City. So to be this, it's like you're living in a bubble if you think there's nothing better than Lutz that St. Louis City could get.
Yeah, Thomas, your thoughts on the initial move, and now that we've had some time to react to it and see some more things come out.
Well, Rocchio, I just go back to the conversation that we had on the post game after the loss to Vancouver about where do the pillars fall for this team? Is it through the pipeline? Is it through the transfer acquisitions? And really, with Lutz, the transfer acquisitions, like some of them have been good, but a lot of them have not been great. And then coming off of a summer window where we even talked about on the show. So if you haven't listened to it, go check it out because it's phenomenal, just raw emotion, just laying into the officials like you read about, but also the frustrations as fans and seeing the product on the field and kind of a state of the union and what we're talking about right now. But the transfers just were not there for Lutz time and time again, and then coming off of a summer window where he's even gone on record as saying this is the easiest time, I guess, for MLS clubs to make moves. Whether the front office felt like those moves were lackluster or whether they wanted the team to be more aggressive. At the end of the day, Lutz Pfannenstiel is no longer with the club, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're shifting to a different pillar in the pipeline, or maybe they're just shifting a philosophy as a whole. But I think for a lot of fans, and for me included, the frustration really is just you're hitting the reset button again, right? It's like that's what happened. That's what it felt like when we were like, okay, Carnell's out, now bring in Olaf. You hit the reset button again. Okay, Lutz is out, now bring in somebody else. It's like the success that this team had in year one to the team that we're looking at right now, there's a stark contrast of personnel that exists between those two teams. And, the jury's still out whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Carnell's having great success with Philadelphia, and I don't know. We still have yet. It's the show me state. It's Missouri. We need St. Louis City to show us that they know what they're doing, and moving on from these guys that have had success and are potentially going on to have success elsewhere. That's where we run into, conflict of situations where like, what is going on?
Go ahead, Grant.
No, I was just going to say, I was just going to give a little more thoughts to that just real quick. With Lutz, I think the year one success, while great, I think it's very common in this game. Whenever you see a newly promoted team, whenever you see a new franchise, The MLS
in this season that's having success as an expansion side. Come on, Grant. That's ridiculous.
No, okay, but I'm saying you normally see first-year teams in any league do well. So it's just because the atmosphere, the fans are bought in. There's no pressure. You normally see those teams do better than elsewhere. It's about the last 2 years, and I think that Cardinal decision ever since then with Lutz, it's been slowly on the downward trajectory. And okay, you fire Melberg. Oh, bad hire. Okay. And then new manager in, and you're still bad. So it feels like the 2 years was enough. Soccer moves pretty quick. You don't get a lot of time to rebuild because the draft is kind of irrelevant. Like,
well, it's changing a little bit. They're getting a lot of good depth pieces from their draft over the last few years.
But it's different than other American sports where you can really rebuild.
Yeah, that's fair. So does the timing of this, because that's one big thing that jumped out to me in the moment. I'm going to focus on that for a lot of my thought process around this. Does the timing of this just at the end of the summer transfer window, just after the game in Vancouver, does this feel to either of you, and we'll go with Thomas first this time, does this feel like something that has been, kind of steaming and cooking for the last 2 or 3 weeks, or do you think there was kind of a straw broke the camel's back moment that led to this timing?
I think I mean, to Grant's point, I think it's kind of been cooking throughout the course of these seasons since the first season's success. And it's just been kind of building. And obviously you can kind of see the writing on the wall when Carnell gets fired. It's like, and then Olaf gets fired too. It's like, okay, we're running out of people to look at. Right. But I think there was an opportunity there for the front office to kind of say, okay, well, let's lay off them a little bit. Obviously hindsight's 2020. Like I'm still blindsided by this, and we're hours later. Like I just did not think this was going to happen today. Especially scrolling on my Twitter. But I think the front office was probably like, well, let's see what he does in the summer window. Lots of opportunity there to make moves. And I think when it comes down to the bare bones, they just deemed that he wasn't aggressive enough or didn't make the moves that they thought were necessary to push the club in the right direction. I don't know, but it doesn't really feel to me like it's like, oh, it's a bad loss against Vancouver that put it over the edge, because one, the officials had fingerprints all over that game, but I really also felt that like I think Vancouver's coach talked after the game, like City played like a team that was much better than their record dictated. And I think that's progress moving in the right direction, not just for Lutz, but for Critchley as well. So with obviously it's not the result that you want, but like steps in the right direction, right? At least from the perspective of the opposing head coach. So I don't think the front office heard those comments where we're like, well, we got to get rid of everybody and just blow up shop. I think it was more tied to the summer window, kind of like we're talking about.
Yeah, to Thomas's point, I don't think that with a sporting director you're fired because of one game. Like with managers, it's like, oh, if you lose this game, like you're out. Where I think with sporting directors, it's a little bit of time. Now, if you talk about the timing, Rock, I think if they're gonna do it, now is the perfect time, because a sporting director, it's in the winter transfer window, November, December, January, when the moves will be made. So now you hire somebody within the next, month, 2 months, you have time for a search. You don't have to panic. And that person could be in charge of hiring a new coach and finding and identifying your new players this winter. So still, whether you agree if it's right or wrong, at least they didn't drag it out. If you drag it out to November, October, then you're up the creek without a paddle, then you're, oh no. We got to find a coach, and we got to find players.
It's less about the actual timing, whether or not it's a good time to make the move, and more for why now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess is more the timing thing I'm asking about. And by the way, did STL City win? Said BC place is cursed. Yes, of course, that was the away game to Vancouver, the last time Bradley Carnell coached this team. And of course, now Lutz Fonenschio, the last team that he is in charge as sporting director, is in a away match against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Here's why it jumped out to me, and I want to get your guys' reaction on this. Everything tells me this is a move from an ownership group that didn't see enough from their sporting director in this past transfer window. And that hits a little surprising because he made one of the biggest moves in franchise history in Falou Fall. spent another $1 million on Sang-Bin Jung, didn't do a lot more than that, left a senior roster spot open, which did seem a little curious. So a lot of the issues, and let's go back to a winter transfer window that was Conrad Vollum, Timo Baumgartel, and not much more. Talking about the last two windows for Lutz, two pretty light windows overall. And a lot of, I think, the ownership group, not the ownership group, a lot of the assumption has been that the ownership group wasn't providing him a larger budget to make more moves than he did. The fact that they make this move after the moves he made, it feels to me like them firing a coach or firing them a sporting director who didn't do enough with what he was being given, which tells me Lutz Pfannenstiel was being given more than we were being made to believe. And I have not had that thought process at any point in the last 2 years. This is the first time I've had that thought process, but the timing makes me think that. Thomas, your thought process on a kind of narrative breaking thought process.
So I'm kind of thinking outside of the box here, but the more that we talk this out too, is like, obviously Lutz had trouble. He brought in some transfers, but you can also make the argument that there's a lot of people that he swung and missed on or that didn't want to come here. So, and I know that Doug Armstrong has vocalized that too before. It's like, as much as we love St. Louis as a sports town and we know everything that all the benefits that reside here and like how people come here and they never leave, right? It's like, especially in like global soccer spheres, like I think Matthew Baker was talking about it on Twitter. It's like, we know the importance of soccer capital USA and the history of soccer in St. Louis, but like globally, like either a lot of people don't care or they just don't know, right? I mean, so that's not really a poll. And there's
the same thing trying to get like Giancarlo Stanton to St. Louis because it's the best fans in baseball. Like it's not a real thing that's actually going to happen, guys.
But that's the argument I think that I'm making is it's like, okay, if you take all those like heartstrings and emotions out of it, like what pull are you getting for, global soccer superstars to come to St. Louis instead of New York, instead of LA, like we saw with Marco Royce? Even if you're saying that the guy's going on vacation, like obviously there's a reason that he's there. And like all these teams have these little pockets, and even like years of history, like the Seattle Sounders, it's different with an expansion team where you're like, yeah, we're just starting out. Like, we'd really love for you to like come take a chance on us, but also like, we can't pay you way more than everybody else because we're trying to make a profit. And like, we got to work within a budget. So I think it's a much more difficult balancing act than just be like, well, let's just throw all the dollars at somebody, because we know from the Cardinals and the Blues, like we don't really have the funds to do that, but we also don't have the pull of these big, massive cities like Miami, like New York, all these ones to just like, make people want to come here and be like, oh, I can't wait to get to St. Louis. I do think once people get here, they love it, but it's the matter of getting them here that I think we struggle with globally in all sports, not just MLS, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and to your point, Thomas, I think it's even harder because the MLS is what the MLS is. At least with the Blues and Cardinals, if they're throwing top dollar, players will play for them because they're in the upper echelon of their sport. Whereas the MLS falls somewhere in the middle. Maybe you'll get some of the young stars that will develop and then leave, or you'll get some of the aging out stars, like Marco Royce, Lionel Messi, obviously. You think Forsberg in New York, guys that had a pretty good career over in Europe and then they're ready. So you're already competing with that. And then on top of it, you're trying to recruit as an expansion team in Middle America in a mid-major market, I guess you could call it. Like, I genuinely think this is a very tough job. And on kind of to your point, Rock, I'm curious with this narrative breaking kind of message that seemed like ownership gave Lutz more than we thought. I wonder if players didn't want to come play for a little bit of a boys club. Lutz brought his guys over. Berkey was one of his guys. Leuven was one of his guys. There's I know I'm missing a few guys. Like, I don't know if I want to come play over here when I know Lutz has 3 or 4 guys here and I'm competing at the same spot. Do I want to come over and do that? Like, I'm not saying that's happening, but it's a very real possibility, I feel like, of why you could be missing out on some targets.
The big question I had today for everybody, does this give you more confidence moving into 2026? It's a big move, but there's so much now going into 2026. new sporting director, new head coach, a lot of roster turnover potentially. Does this give you confidence that this team is finally moving in the right direction, for the future or for 2026? Thomas, you got the best look on your face for this question, so we'll start with you.
I feel like it has to give you the opposite, right? I mean, there's just so much, like, it's such a balancing act, and like the sporting director is like the head coach is contingent on the sporting director and his skills, and then it's a residual like impact effect afterwards of like what signings you make, their opinions of players, like how that drastically changes, the lineup from a day to day. So until I start seeing this team string a couple wins together, I feel like I can't feel confident about anything. But maybe that's just the fan in me. I don't know.
I would say more confident next year, yes, because it seems like at least I think we're guaranteed next year there will at least be a sense of direction. Now, that direction could be the wrong one. There's a lot up in the air with who's going to be the head coach, who's going to be the sporting director, who are they going to buy. But if ownership gets this right and the sporting director is able to hire a head coach who fits his mindset with some pieces St. Louis City already has, maybe is able to retain a few guys and then bring in more pieces, I think there will be a better sense of direction next year than maybe St. Louis City had going into this year.
Speaking of that plan, Diego Gigliani interviewed in The Athletic after making this move. Let's take a look at some of the big quotes from Diego in The Athletic, kind of surmise the thought process behind it, what the plan is for St. Louis City is going forward. Here is Diego first talking about the 5-year plan. What I can confirm for sure is the level of ambition and commitment that exists at the ownership level to be higher performing or to really be as high performing on the pitch as the club is off the pitch. And I think that ambition and that vision is really, really critical to then taking all decisions in unison with that big goal. So as we are having these conversations, we talk a lot about winning trophies in this next 5-year period. We talk a lot about developing St. Louis born and bred talent, and those things are really important to our ownership. We're in the process of committing to those goals and setting the right sets of strategies to deliver on those goals. Let's I wasn't, swung too much by Diego on that one. Here was one of his earlier comments as well. We need stability on the sporting side to be able to get to performance, and we haven't had that in the last 2 years. Some of that has to do with head coach changes. We've had a natural and positive evolution of our squad, more and more investment as well. There's that coming up. We just haven't seen results improve at all over the couple of years. So as we get to the end of that 5-year cycle, we now want to start planning a new 5-year cycle. And so we look out and we look at 2030 and say, what are the goals that we want to achieve in the next 5 years? And how do we put ourselves on the best path to be able to achieve those? And we feel that a change in sporting leadership will help us to be able to start this next 5-year cycle. I know fans don't like hearing about 5-year cycles. They want to win next year, but I do think it's reasonable to understand that Diego Gigliani has to be talking in that frame of reference. A lot of big picture stuff there from Diego in both of those quotes. They're up on the screen right now. I can go back to the other one if you guys want it. Grant, anything that jumps out to you from those first 2 comments from Diego in The Athletic?
I think the more and more investment kind of line, that quote is big because it shows that it's one thing if the sporting director fails because he's getting to work with pennies. It's tough, but I think he's gotten a fair supplement of money, and it seems like they're willing to spend. They're willing to say, if we can get a guy and we can get him to want to come here, we'll splash it. We're not afraid to do that, or we'll splash it in other positions. And I think each year we've seen them invest a little bit more, invest a little bit smarter and more in different positions. And some of those haven't worked out. But I think the plan is, it seems like in this 5-year plan, it's not cost cutting. It's we're going to continue investing, and hopefully in 3 years, we'll have a 3-year gap of really competing because of the investments we're doing now.
Thomas, your thoughts on the president and GM Diego Gigliani in The Athletic?
Yeah, it seems like kind of what we were talking about, Rocchio, on the last post game, as well as what we're talking about today. If there is difficulty bringing in players, obviously a way to circumnavigate that is to throw more money at guys. But it really does feel like the pressure and the emphasis from this front office, kind of like they see it and kind of like we see it internally as fans, all that pressure is going to come through the pipeline. So reiterating what we said on the last post game, how do you bridge the gap between when that pipeline arrives? Because I mean, City 2-1 again. I mean, these guys just don't lose. Miggy Perez with 2 goals in the back of the net is unbelievable. Like, these guys are just stacked night in and night out. But we got to let them develop at a formidable pace, right? You can't just throw these guys in the fire and be like, good luck, everybody. Like, you're 18 years old and we got a first squad full of, young guns just throwing them in against men. Like, it's just not going to work out like that. So how do you bridge the gap in between? I think that's what this team is trying to figure out right now, and what this 5-year plan will really entail, because once they get to the end of that 5-year plan, fingers crossed, all the stars align, you're going to have a lot more guys from the pipeline that are playing first team minutes than you are right now. So whether that means, moving on from Roman Berkey and reallocating, like, that would suck. I love Berkey, but if you can reallocate those dollars into a position where you have more of a need and maybe bring up a guy through the pipeline that you feel is ready at the goalie position. I mean, I don't know. You guys, Rocky might know the prospects better than me, but I don't think anybody comes close to the talent caliber of Berkey. But if you can kind of, I don't know how you bridge the gap better than you are right now, but that's the question that they're going to need to figure out, because I do think that the pressure and the emphasis for this team and for this front office in terms of a return on investment and in terms of long-term success for this team will absolutely come through the pipeline and the St. Louis soccer capital in the history that resides here.
It's trick. Go ahead, Grant.
No, I want to hear what you have to say, because I want to respond with something. What I think, if they get rid of Berkey, the solution.
Okay, I'll pivot to that too, because it does kind of seem like there's a good chance without Lutz that not just Berkey, but they don't accept Klaus's option, and maybe because Tom Bogert in his episode with SoccerWise HQ, I'm not sure if I have this part in the clips we might play from Bogert if we have enough time. But he did mention that Lutz, how we all know how close Lutz is to Berkey, Klaus, and Leuven. Specifically, just how close he is to Leuven, how personally close he's been to him through this tragedy he's working through. Are any of those 3 players going to be want to be with St. Louis City if Lutz isn't the sporting director? Like, are all 3 of those pillars going to be on their way out for different reasons? That could really change St. Louis City going forward.
Yeah, and my comment about Berkey was just going to be, if Berkey's one of, if not the best keeper in the league, I think you can maybe put an argument on 2 other guys. But in the grand scheme of things, if he were to go and you reallocate that designated player spot, that high-paying spot, to maybe somewhere where there's more of a need, a little bit more of an impact, if I say, because I think you can go.
I hate that thought process.
No, just hear me out, Rock. If you go from a great keeper to an above average keeper, I think it's less of a drop off than going from a great, let's say, midfield striker to an above average midfield striker. I think you can hide a keeper a little bit more if the team around it is good.
Yeah, if you play a different system, which I guess they're going to do. So yeah, to your point, that could all line up.
What I'm saying is, if you lose Berkey, and I don't think you just call up some Joe Schmo and say, hey, we're going to build the best defense in the league, you're not going to have to do anything. Still getting above average proven MLS goalie or a goalie from around the world. But then you reallocate those funds elsewhere in the pitch to where then hopefully the goalie needs to make less stops. I just think that if that happens, that could be the thought process around it. Obviously, keeping Berkey would be great, but if the writing's on the wall, that might be where you go instead of getting another DP goalie.
To your point too, I mean, they just, like we talk about, they just spent so much money on Fayu Fall and center back position, so that should, in theory, help you hide your flaws at goalie a little bit more and not have to have such a perfect human being, much less a perfect goalie in net like Roman Berkey.
Yeah, it would suck to see all those changes, because I mean, Klaus looked like he had earned that option, but now, I mean, just with every possible player, especially ones that have that I don't want to use a German word, but Uber connection with Lutz Pfannenstiel, it seems really it kind of seems like a crap shot that any of those guys are going to want to stay here. Maybe I'm over stressing this a little bit, but that seems like it's a little bit shocking. Eggplant emoji coming in on the chat. And if you want to jump into the chat, please do here on STL Sports Central. We love it when the listeners get involved. I'm not confident for 2026, but maybe in 2029 when these City 2 players are ready for full-time minutes on the senior roster. Why we got to wait till 2029? Tyson Pierce, Mekhi Joyner, Miguel Perez. I think 2027, 2028. Come on, people, have a little confidence.
You still have to fill out the whole squad, though. And I think fair. If you get every single position full of someone that's lived and breathed St. Louis soccer their whole life and came up through City 2, I think that's when you've got a conglomerate team that just moves as a unit, like Eggplant emoji's talking about. So.
You know what? While we're talking about this, I want to ask one more question. Go ahead, Greg, before we switch.
No, I was just going to say, I wonder if that quote that oh my gosh, who was it? The president of that I wonder if when he says St. Louis developed, if he means all St. Louis area prospects or guys that they developed.
St. Louis born and bred talent.
I would say I agree with him, but I think that if you take guys that have been here since they're 14, 15 years old, I think that they can mold as St. Louis born and bred talent.
When you talk about,
would you consider Girdwood Reich a St. Louis born and bred talent? Because he is very young and he's playing a lot. Well, not playing a lot, but like he's playing his young years of soccer here.
And if they develop
kind of a gray area,
I would call him a St. Louis bred talent. I don't know,
right.
Not born, but I think that should fall under the same umbrella. Guys that City at least identify early, and that they then develop into first team players.
Well, I think the thing is with a guy like Girdwood Reich, they don't want to have to pay $800,000 for those guys.
Yes.
I think they don't have to pay almost $1 million for a player who only plays once every 6 or 7 games, which might be one of the underlying issues. One of the last quotes really quickly from Diego, he was asked about the MLS's complex rules. Of course, those could be changing, but I think it's funny because I've seen a lot of the articles today talking about who they could hire. They're like, well, maybe in the future, it'd actually be good to have a guy who has more European experience. Flip it. Of course, now that's the thing you want to have. But here's Diego. I'd like to assume that changes will bring more correlation between spend and performance as exists anywhere else in the world. It's interesting to me he's opening up a comment saying that it's hard in the MLS to turn dollars into guaranteed wins. Interesting comments in light of everything that we're saying right now. It will start looking more a bit like these South American or European leagues, where you can buy wins. That was me filling out that was not a quote from Diego. Back to quotes. Where your ability to think long-term and make the right decisions. Yeah, that's what you were talking about. Find the right talent, create the right organization and building blocks. All of those things will be as important here as they are in any of those other European or Latin American teams. So we will still be open to both international and MLS profiles for a sporting director. And regardless of which way we end up choosing, we know that we will need to have in the organization the right skill set of the other, because we will not be able to be successful if we just focus on MLS backgrounds, sporting directors, head coaches, and coaching staff, or the opposite. We need to have some combination to be successful. Grant, a lot of emoting there. I appreciated that. Makes it fun for everybody to watch, but you have thoughts and I need to hear them.
I just, to your point of your sarcasm, like, no, if you spend the most in the MLS, you still are going to be good. Like the top spenders, the LAs, the Miamis are the best teams in the MLS. Now, Miami has not won it yet with Messi, but they've been a top 3 team in the MLS every single year with him. LAFC bought Gareth Bale. What did they do? They won the MLS Cup. They now have Son Heung-min, Marco Reus, Reus on Galaxy, pardon me. But they have Hugo Lloris. They've spent a lot of money on a good team out there in LA, and they're a pretty good team. Like that's spending money gets you wins. And it doesn't mean the top spender is going to win the most, but the more you spend, you're going to have better players and you should be a better team. Like it works here just the same as anywhere else in the world in soccer.
But it's interesting to me too also that Diego is making this point about needing to have both profiles, because they talked about how, first of all, they never admitted it, but Lutz not having a lot of experience with the MLS rosters bit this team in the ass more than once.
Yes.
Secondarily, when they hired Olaf Melberg, they said, we're not worried about him having zero MLS experience. We have enough people in the building that know how to deal with the MLS. Clearly, that's not true. It wasn't true then. It wasn't true when they said it. When I asked Diego after they fired Melberg, I'm like, and I asked him, I straight up said to Diego, based on everything you're saying here in the press conference and in the presser when you fired Milberg, it sounds like you guys maybe didn't have enough MLS experience in the room. His response to that was, we haven't determined that was one of the issues. So I'm kind of at my wit's end with Diego. I don't want to call it double talk, but it's double talk about how important MLS backgrounds are, how much MLS backgrounds they have already in City's front office. I'm completely thrown, and none of this quote gave me any more insight into what Diego actually thinks about the importance of MLS experience or how much MLS experience they have currently in this organization ready to impact things. Thomas,
it also very much does not feel good to see all the screenshots and the comments from people being like, oh, you're telling me this guy got fired? And it's like, people talking about Lutz being like, oh, he figured out, like, he cracked the code in season 1. Like, he's doing everything different than the rest of the league. And like, he's doing it with flying colors. And then the seasons afterwards, it's like, oh, maybe we do need like DPs and not like a team full of people that aren't DP status. So it's like, I don't know. At some point, I love the idea that City has this mentality where they can just trailblaze and do their own thing. But if that's not working, and it feels like outside of that one season that hasn't really worked, maybe we get, conform a little bit more to the success patterns that we've seen so far in the MLS. I don't know, just throwing ideas out there.
I think that's fair to say.
I'm also curious to this first point, kind of the trailblazing, almost a cocky arrogance about them. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I mean in a way that, look, we're going to change things up. We're going to play this aggressive, free-flowing, fast. Our players are going to be arrogant. We're going to score 4 or 5 goals, and that's how we're going to beat you, is what it seemed like they were trying to do in year 1. The high-pressing style. And they wanted someone that did that in this third year. That's why they hired Olaf, but he changed how he played. I wonder if now it will bring the philosophy change of maybe a little more tactical, controlled, trying to calm things down more. Maybe we grind out a few more wins. Maybe we see off 2-1 wins instead of going for the third goal. Like, just a whole philosophy shift. I'm not saying they can't play fast, but maybe more cautious abandon instead of reckless abandon. I don't know.
First of all, did STL City win? Puts in Atlanta has spent a shit ton of money, and look where they are. To be fair, they also did win a title from spending a shit ton of money.
Exactly. Yes.
And they hit a market that had not been hit at the time. At the time, no one had said, "What if we just hire a bunch of South Americans?" And no one had done that in the MLS. And Atlanta United did that, and they won a championship right off the rip. And did STL City points win? That's not a sustainable way to win, but you can clearly. You can pop. You got into one of the questions I was going to get into, Grant Salsman. I've been asking this question ever since Taylor Twellman yelled at me on Twitter at the beginning of the season. What does St. Louis soccer look like to you? Because to me, all I ever wanted was the team that came to my city to play a Gegenpressing / pressing style. By the way, the Pirates just tied things up at 6 apiece in the top of the 9th. So we may be doing this episode. No, we get to go longer on the episode, guys. This is a good thing. Because as soon as the Cardinals game starts to wrap up, we're done. This episode's over, and we gotta give it over to Card Central post game.
It's the blown lead, Brock. I'm getting PTSD.
This podcast just is gonna keep rolling on as long as they keep blowing this. So anyhow, I need to hear from you guys. I like seeing gegenpressing, pressing, counter-pressing, counter-attacking. All of those styles of soccer is how I got into the European game. Was Jurgen Klopp at Borussia Dortmund. That's how I got into European soccer. So that's always going to be how I like the game aesthetically the most. But for more of a just typical St. Louis standard, what do you guys expect? If we're talking, if it's you guys and we're talking to guys who've been playing at Veta since 1985, what do you think St. Louis soccer looks like to them? Go ahead, Grant. You at this point, whoever emotes the most gets called on first.
I'll say this first to your first point. I agree with you. I love gegenpressing. I love the Man City. They do it with when they won the Jurgen Klopps. But the best teams in the world are the ones that I think can gegenpress. The best teams in the league. Now let's look at a team like Leeds United. They tried the same thing. They tried the Red Bull style. It worked great with Bielsa for 1 year. And then Jesse Marsch took over, and it slowly – if you're not the best team in your league or one of the best with the most talented and the most depth, eventually that style of pressing and that style of play is exhausting. It gets you injured. It gets your players tired. And then you don't have the depth to withstand. Liverpool, Man City, Dortmund, they're the best teams in their leagues. They can do it. But City has not proved to be that yet. So I think year one, people were taken aback a little bit by the style. It was a shock, but you got figured out. So I still think, Rock, that free-flowing, attacking is the St. Louis style. But I'm not it needs to be in a different way. And I don't know what that is exactly. I can't quite put it into words, but somewhere where you're able to play free, a fun style of soccer, but still with something on the defensive side.
How about you, Thomas?
I feel like St. Louis as a whole, like there's a history of soccer here, right? But that history of soccer spans so far from the counties of St. Louis. I mean, you've got teams like Chaminade, Slough, De Smet, even spanning all the way down to like Jefferson County with St. Pius X, like down to DeSoto. Like there is that blue collar, like gig and press, like body to body, hard on tackles, get stuck in, all that stuff. But there's also like the private schools of like, we're going to play tactical, we're going to dissect you, and we're going to control the ball, possess like 95% of the game, and then beat you like 3-0 dynamically. So I don't think there's necessarily like a STL City has to play gegenpress, but I think it needs to be 100% effort, and that's where that blue collar mentality comes in. It resonates throughout the Blues. It resonates throughout the Cardinals, but I think it's difficult for the players, especially ones that are coming from overseas that aren't used to this weather. If you're telling them, hey, even when the opponent has the ball in their defensive side, you're pushing and pressing on every play, although also when it goes over your head and goes to your defensive side, you got to book it back to get that too. Like that's a lot of energy exertion. And I get like guys being tired, but visually from my standpoint, it is so hard to see guys hands on their hips when the ball is near them or just like walking around like Lionel Messi does. Like not everybody can do that. You know, it's like, I want to see the Indiana Vassilev workhorses night in and night out at every single position. And I feel like, you know, build a style that allows that. Maybe gegenpressing isn't the answer. Maybe it is. But I think from an effort standpoint, the system takes more of a back seat and more so the effort level, whatever it is. Like you can play any style, but just give me 100% effort every single night. And that's all I care about.
Yeah.
Very good. Keep going, Grant.
I was just going to say, Rock, and this might sound a little biased coming from me, but Thomas Frank's style at Brentford is it's very random. No. I know he's at Tottenham now. He's my favorite team, but let's go to him at Brentford. What he wanted to do first was build the defense first, and then we'll worry about everything else. You build that strong defense. We spring a trap on you when you're not expecting it. Our defense turns to our offense, and we're still playing exciting. We're still finding ways to score 2-3 goals a game with the midfield.
You heard it here. Grant's a big Olaf Melberg fan.
I was just going to say that was...
But it wasn't in the right situation. Melberg did not do what he said he was going to do.
Maybe the mindset is there and the execution is lacking.
Yes, I think the last 3 years it's been a offense. Our offense will be so good pressing you and stuff that we don't even need to worry about defense. Where I think the right approach, but still playing free flowing, is we're going to steal the ball away from you on defense in situations when you're not ready for it at midfield, in your half, in our half, and boom, we're going to spring the counter attack on you like that. I think that is still the way to play a free-flowing, fun style that people will want to see, instead of maybe we push everyone back, let's win games 1-0, 2-0. You know, I think there's still a way to find a happy medium that isn't 100% go all the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. There's a lot of people, if they talk about the classic St. Louis style, they don't want the 100% go anymore. And I think a lot of St. Louis people want more possession. I personally couldn't care. Run around with your hair on fire. That's the most entertaining thing you can possibly do for casual fans. And that's what I think is best for the game, is when casual fans are having fun. Potentially the Cardinals could walk this one off in the bottom of the ninth. So just in case they do, I want to get some thoughts from some people who know this game even better than we do. Soccer-Wise HQ, they had Tom Bogert and David Gass doing their usual podcast, and I pulled a couple of clips from that pod, and I just want to get to a couple ones. Here they are kind of breaking down their original thoughts on the move and what the potential plan could be for City SC going forward.
Should be at the top of any list for next CSO. Luis Muzi. So he's not the CSO in Orlando anymore, but he's special advisor. He still works for Orlando, but these guys, what they want to do is be the CSO and pick a team. So could you convince him to leave if you offer the CSO job? Saying, I think yes, but I don't know that for a fact. So Luis Muzi is another one. I think those two, just given their track records, I think those two would stand above just of names that we know for sure. Just go find your favorite number 2 in the league. Interview 5 of them and pick your favorite. Yeah. Look at what Chris Albright's done in Cincy. Yeah. That team was literally the worst ever team.
Which, by the way, these are the examples, Cincy and Galaxy, for St. Louis fans to be MLS, though, now we have proven you can flip fairly fast with the right people in place.
So there you heard it. They threw out a couple names. Neil McGuinness with LAFC right now. The other name he threw out, Luis Muzi as well. So he threw out a couple names. The clip I'm going to play here in a minute is going to be some other names he's throwing out there. But I thought it was interesting. Look at the turnaround that Cincy was able to make, and can City turn around? Do you guys have any confidence that City can make the right moves with the people in the room right now and turn around quickly?
I do. I think I'm not saying that it's going to be second place. Yeah, the Cardinals just walk-off home run, Alec Burleson.
All right, these are the closing thoughts. Hit it, Grant.
I think it can be turned around. I'm not saying they're going to be in second place at this time next year, but I think that whoever's job it is next year, playoffs are the goal. I think the organization will continue to spend like that. I don't think it'll be, we're going to spend on some cheap guys, young guys, and hope they're good in 2-3 years. I think at worst, you want to be in the playoffs next year.
I feel like, this might be a cop-out answer, but I feel like you can't get much worse, right? So at the very least, the bar is set that you can only go up from here. And I think we're talking about, bringing in a new sporting director is that can make a significant impact on any team. And Cincinnati and Orlando are great examples. So especially a team like St. Louis that already has a taste of that first season, if they do keep guys that were here for that team in the fold, I think having that taste of success already just makes them want it even more. But getting someone in that, admin position that can kind of spearhead everything as the captain of the ship should, lead them to success and hopefully back to the promised land of the playoffs.
Grant Salsman, Thomas Welch, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, as always, to the chat who are listening here on STL Sports Central. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell button as well. Coming up next, it's going to be the Cards Central postgame as Riley O'Brien gets the win and Alec Burleson walks it off with a home run in the bottom of the ninth to beat the Pirates 7-6. Again, thank you to everybody here on this City Central podcast, breaking down the firing of Lutz. We're working on a lot of stuff. News from this firing is still going to kind of keep trickling in. What happens, what the next move is for everybody going forward. So we will be doing more podcasts like this. If you follow the City stuff, potentially next week we're going to be talking to Manuel Veth, who covers MLS and a lot of the German leagues. We're going to be talking to him about kind of what went down here and more things as well. Look out. We're also going to be trying to get an interview going with Mekhi Joyner, who was newly called up and had a big week on Saturday in Vancouver. Had the penalty, but we're going to ignore that and talk about the good things. So a lot of stuff coming up here on City Central and for your City coverage on STL Sports Central. But that's enough for tonight. We got to give it over to the baseball game again. For Grant Salsman, for Thomas Welch, I'm Matthew Rocchio. This is City Central on STL Sports Central. Cards postgame coming up next. Have a great night, St. Louis.